All right, here we go. Living now, living right now. This is L.nathan here, your host here for this next hour at WFO Power 96.5 FM on your dial. Our principal sponsor, of course, the Community Action Organization of Western New York, still fighting the war on poverty, now in our 52nd year. I want to welcome all of you again to this hour of insight, introspection, and interpretation of facts, events, and trends affecting you right here and right now in Buffalo and the Western New York community, and in fact, connecting to communities all across the country. Each week we focus on things we think will be of interest to you, which will serve to motivate you and serve to connect you to the broader issues that affect our communities here in Western New York. Now, today's program is live, so you can call in, you can join our discussion. I hope that you will. Our number here again is 837-1112. That's 837-1112. And so the first thing I wanted to do is to give a, just all of us sort of tip our hats and, say a prayer for the family of our long-term NAACP president, Frank Messiah, who passed away this weekend. As you all know, he has been a champion of civil rights in our area. He was particularly focused on education, which you know that this program has been focused on for a lot of our time, the many weeks that we have been on and years that we have been on the air. And so I just want to give a shout out to Frank's family, to Lisa and Francesca, and I forgot the other daughter's name will come to me in a second. But to bring our empathy and sympathy and condolences to the family, and anything that we can do here at the Community Action Organization to help, we're definitely going to try to do so. So much love to you, Frank. You have been a tremendous help and a credit to our community. Godspeed in your transition, and we wish you so very, very well. Also a shout out to Grassroots, which had its annual dinner this past Saturday. And I think it was well attended. The Deltas also had their Jabberwocky event this past weekend, so a lot of things were going on. But last week, I want to pick up on what we were talking about last week. We had two guests on the program, Tiffany Lax, who was a former investigative reporter for the Buffalo News, who now works for the Education Trust New York, and Ian Rosenblum, who is the director of the Education Trust New York. And we were discussing an initiative by the Education Trust pushing to have a higher representation of teachers and administrators in our schools who come from the backgrounds and communities the Buffalo District students come from. As we were having that conversation, a secondary but important issue also emerged. We touched on the continuing push by the community of teachers unions, school administrator unions, to eliminate the outcomes or using the outcomes of student tests in any form of teacher evaluations. Let me put this into context for you, because I'm here with Emmanuel Radford, who does the live streaming of our program. And by the way, if you're on a computer or you have a handheld device where you can get into the internet, you type in Facebook and then type in Living Now, Living, Now, NOW, type that in, and our program will come up. You'll be able to see the program live as it's being produced. And you can type in any questions, concerns, or observations that you have, and we will respond to those on the air as much as we can. And so, Emmanuel, I'm going to let you be the foil for me on this for a second. I want to put something into context for you. If your job is to be a mental health social worker, let's say that's the job you have, and it was your job to help as many mentally challenged people as possible achieve a high degree of self-sufficiency, well, shouldn't we include your success or lack of success in achieving that goal, and evaluating whether we should keep you in that position. In other words, if you have 50 clients this year and only one reaches self-sufficiency, and I look at other people who are mental health social workers around the city, working with the same client base, same kinds of people coming from the same neighborhoods, and they have 25 out of 50 of their clients reach self-sufficiency. Unless something else is going on. Come on, Emmanuel, help me out here. Unless something else is going on, I'm going to suspect that maybe the problem has something to do with you, right?
As you should.
But that's not what the teachers and administrators, principals and school district superintendents, that's not what they're asking. They're saying that no, you shouldn't look at that, because those outcomes are based on something that we don't have any control over. The kids are black, we don't have any control over that. Kids are brown, we don't have any control over that. The kids come from troubled neighborhoods, we don't have any control over that. The kids, 70% of them, come from poor or near poor households, we don't have any control over that. A lot of the households are not really tightly organized. They're not organized like middle-class households. We don't have any control over that. A lot of them don't have food, in the morning. We don't have any control over that. So they come up with these and a whole plethora of other things that they don't have any control over, or they say they don't have any control over. And on the basis of that, they say you can't judge us based on the outcomes that we have in successfully educating the kids. You can't judge that, and make that a part of our evaluation, because that part of the story, the education story, is not something that we control. Because we don't control poverty, we don't control single-parent households, we don't control, crime in neighborhoods, and so on. But I don't think that's what the evaluations in New York State and any other state were based on. They would look at teachers who are teaching similar populations in similar neighborhoods in similar cities and say, if the teachers over here in Syracuse are teaching a population of kids who are 60-70% are near poor or near poor households, where 60-70% of the kids live in households, single-parent households, where the crime is higher than it is in middle-income neighborhoods, but they're successful with 80% of the kids in their classrooms are able to read and count on grade. Only 20% of the kids in your classrooms are reading and counting on grade. I would just suspect, maybe it's me, but I would suspect that maybe you're the problem. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only thing that I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at, all the factors that you talked about. There's a lot of things that may be going on that may make it difficult, for you to teach this population of kids. And so I want to kind of look at those things and take that into account. I want to look at your teaching style. I want to look at how you manage the classroom. I want to look at your use of curriculum materials. I want to look at what the school itself is providing you, so that you're not having to go out and buy the things you need to teach the kids, and that's being provided to you by the school administration itself. I'm going to look at all of those things, but I'm not going to fail to look at your success in educating the children. I'm not going to take that off the table, but that's what is being pushed right now. A recent article that I think it appeared in Sunday's Buffalo News. The article was titled, "So Bill Would End Use of Tests to Rate Teachers." That's the name of the bill. And what it says is teacher union presidents, union members across the state, and legislators receiving campaign donation support. I stuck that in there. That wasn't the article. I just stuck that in there. Right? That legislators receiving campaign donation support from them are congratulating themselves for the introduction of a bill into the state legislature that would end the incorporation of student standardized test outcomes in the evaluation of the job performance of the teachers of those students. In this article, there is an assertion by Andrew Pallotta, the president of the New York State United Teachers Union, that they were applauding an end to a broken system that has been a morale killer for the schools. If you go through the article, however, there is nothing in the article that tells you what is broken or why that brokenness has been a morale killer for the schools. I just want you to feel what's being said here, because if you don't identify what your actual problem is, the solutions that you create to solve your problem, most likely, unless by accident, those solutions are not going to work. Union president says that that's a broken system, and that the system has been a morale killer for the schools. So I asked myself, well, what's the broken part of it? Is it? Let me restate this. Who are we talking about as the schools? I would think that when we're talking about schools, we're talking about teachers, we're talking about students, we're talking about parents, and we're talking about school administrators. Collectively, they make up the constituent parts of the school. Is that a fair statement? So if that's a fair statement, I would ask you, what is broken about providing standardized tests that are the same tests that are being given, everywhere? So you don't have one school giving a soft test, another school giving a harder test in the same subject area. Everybody's using the same test. And the standards by which you evaluate whether or not a student is at grade level is also standardized across the state. What's broken about that? What's broken if you're the parent, if you find out that only 20% of the kids in your child's fourth grade class can read and count on grade, but in a similar class, 16 blocks away, in another elementary school, 80% of the kids in the fourth grade class can read and count on grade? Wouldn't you want to know that?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you ask questions and
Yes.
say, is there something wrong with my child? Is my child like clinically slow? Is there something wrong with this classroom? Is there something wrong with the building? Is there something wrong with the process by which we're educating these children in this particular school building? How would you know that there was a problem if there was no standardized tests and outcomes that you could look at and then compare what's going on with your child and what's going on with other children in similar kinds of classrooms around the state? Fundamentally, that is what the district administrations, in my view, are paid to do. If there were no tools by which to do it, how would it get done? It seems to me that the politics have been worked out here. The lobbyists for the teacher unions have convinced enough of the legislators that teachers should not be evaluated in any part on the basis of the standardized test outcomes of their students. That shouldn't be included in the evaluation of teachers or principals at all. They've convinced a large enough segment of the parents of the students that it would be unfair to the teachers to be evaluated in any part on the basis of the test outcomes of their students. Now, that just, I find that hard to wrap my mind around. The parents have become convinced, so convinced that their students are being harmed by the teachers administering standardized tests and then having the outcomes of the test, interpreted by the state, or scored by the state, and the state giving the test outcomes back to the school districts and saying, here's what's going on with this teacher in this classroom, here's what's going on with this school in your school district, here's what's going on in your overall school district, and here are the concerns, or here's the happiness, that we have, with what's going on. When I say concerns versus happiness, I mean that several years ago, we had a 46% high school graduation rate in Buffalo. That was back in the 2005, 2006, time period. Now we have a 65% graduation rate. That's good news, right? Mm-hmm. Now, it's good news that we have a 65% graduation rate that's 19% higher than what it was 10 years ago. But it's not great news that we only have a 65% graduation rate when it's almost 80%, statewide. And I would expect virtually all students to complete high school and go on to vocational or professional certification. That would be the norm. That would not be abnormal. That would be the norm. That's what we hire you to do. That's what we're putting all this money out here for, is to get that done. If our process to accomplish that goal is insufficient, there's something wrong with our process, then we should change our process. If the tools that we're using to educate the children don't work, then we should get better tools. If there's something wrong with the resource structure that we're using to support the education process, then we should advocate to support the resource structure. But we can't do nothing. We can't put $1 billion out to educate 32,000 children in the Buffalo Public Schools district and only have 4 out of 10 or 3 out of 10. In fact, if you use the state standards, not local standards, if you use state standards, only 14 out of 15 or 14 out of 100 of these kids can read and count on grade.
14 out of 100?
Out of 100. I mean, if you look at Buffalo's English scores or English language arts scores on the standardized test, the math scores on the standardized test, the science scores on the standardized test that are given in late March and early April, you will see that Buffalo scores somewhere in the 15, 16, 17%, and that's up. It was around 11%, okay? So listen, why don't we do this? There's a lot I want to get to. So let's take our first break, and then we'll get into our subject. Hopefully you guys will be calling in to talk to us about what we're talking about at 837-1112. That's 837-1112. We'll see us out of the break here at Living Right Now. FM on your dial. This is L.nathan here, your host. I'm here with Emmanuel Radford, who's doing the live streaming of the program. I think we have a caller hanging on. Let me grab that call real quick. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Hare.
Mother Dora, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. And you just are touched upon a topic. I wrote a paper for my class last night. On state assessments. Analysis of the data-driven instruction, curriculum, all of that I dealt with last night, and I didn't go to bed at 12:30.
It takes a while to get through that stuff. I'm with you.
Yes, it took me a couple of hours because everything that we write for our paperwork has to be documented with scholarly research.
Right.
So it is not easy doing this, but you're certainly on the right pathway in talking about this. It's something that our parents really need to be more informed and educated too, to see the value of those tests, because it lets them know where their children stand in relationships to others. And then the school districts need to use the results so that they can change instruction, improve instruction.
Right.
And I don't think they're doing that. But also, very quickly, I wanted to call and give you the winners of the $100 essay contest.
Okay.
This was for adults only, and the theme was, should teachers be armed in school? Of course, they had to answer other questions, too, that were related to the topic. But that was the main question. But here are the winners. First place, Antonio Regular, $100 first place prize. Second place, Veronica Ivy, $50. And there was a tie at the third place. Tiana Fleming and Dottie Watkins each are going to receive $25. Now, I was only going to give 3 prizes, Mr. Hare, but the people who entered the contest, they were all good. So I'm going to be giving 8 awards this coming Friday, May 4th, at the Meriwether Library from 4 to 5:30 p.m. So I've got 4 people with honorable mention: Tiffany McLeod, John Coates, Lakeisha Johnson, and Nicole Williams, and they're all going to get $20 each for honorable mention. I'm going broke here, Mr. Hare.
I got to get a little more money in your hands so you can.
Well, the thing about it, I do these contests, and this was strictly for adults, to give people an opportunity to express their opinions about topics that impact our city and our nation, because everybody can't be on the radio. Everybody can't host a radio show. Everybody can't be on CNN. But people have opinions. So I find by giving our adults the opportunity to do this, and this was good writing. That's why I decided to recognize all 8 of these people. I mean, they really put a lot into it. But I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you for commenting on these assessments, because it's right on time. Have a good day, Mr. Hare.
All right. Thank you, Mother Doe. Appreciate you so much. And so one of the senators, state senators, reacting to the introduction of this bill, asserted that, I'm quoting him now, he says, "The current law, in my view, is insufficient and does not need to be changed." Then he says, "To what exactly, I don't know." Now, think about that for a second. There's a law on the books that provides a structure for how you can evaluate what's going on in classrooms, in schools, in school districts. This is a state system in which the lion's share of the money that pays for public schools in our state comes from the state government. It does not. The lion's share is not paid for locally. The lion's share is paid for by state governments. So you would think, since the state government pays the majority of the cost for the state's public schools, if anybody has a stake in evaluating the success of the use of those resources, it would be the state, you would think. And so he's putting forth the assertion that a law that was passed that enables the structuring of how you evaluate what's going on in school classrooms, what's going on in schools, what's going on in school districts. He's saying that that law is insufficient. But then he's saying, so he's joining people who are introducing this legislation to take student test outcomes out of the evaluation of teachers, schools, and school districts. He's all for doing that, and then not replacing it with anything because he doesn't know what you should replace it with. I'm not getting that, right? So I mean, it's not the same thing. I used to give you all the little theorem that if you're trying to get to Rochester and you're in Buffalo, you hop in your car and you start driving, and an hour away from Buffalo, you see a sign that says Cleveland, 2 hours ahead. There's a pretty good clue that you're going in the wrong direction. And even if you don't know which way to go, the first thing you should do is stop. Okay? Because if you stop, at least you're not going to go any further in the wrong direction. Then you can sit down and assess, what you're doing and come up with a better plan. But that's not what this situation is. This state senator is not saying that we should stop and do nothing. He's saying that we should stop and let the people who were doing it before go back to doing it the way that they had been doing it before. You're not feeling me. Let me help you with this. I used to be a director of the Office of Special Programs at Erie Community College. One of the things I used to do is go through high school transcripts to assess what the needs were of the students that we were serving in that unit of the community college. And I would come across transcripts. Give you one example. This was a child who had a 76 average. This was in 1980. She graduated in 1980. She had a 76 average. And she was in the bottom 21, she was in the bottom 21% of the kids in her class. So if 100 is the best, she was at 21, okay, in a ranking in her class. Another child who graduated in 1989 from the same school had a 76 average. That child was in the top 26% in his class. With a 76 average, he was in the top 26% of kids graduating in that class. So something happened. Obviously the teachers were scoring the test the same way. So it wasn't that they weren't scoring the test. It wasn't that they weren't giving the test. But something significant happened that you went from a 76 being in the bottom 21% to a 76 being in the top 26%. Something happened. Some erosion had gone on, in the quality of instruction, or at least the quality of the outcomes of the instruction in that school, right? This is what I believe you need to use the test scores for. Using these tests enable you to understand trends that are going on that you might not be able to see in 1 year. But when you look at it over the course of a 3, 4, 5 year period, you can begin to see that a pattern is unfolding. I would suggest to you that when we did the school integration program in 1976, that the restructuring of the schools that took place at that time, which almost eliminated the idea of neighborhood schools entirely, and ended up in a situation where there was no real loyalty and affinity between the students and the schools they were going to. In other words, there was like no family before you. Your older sister, your older brothers, your mother, your father didn't go to that school. There was no equity. That school was not even a part of the community. It was just a building that belonged to somebody downtown, but it wasn't really a part of that community because most of the kids who went to the school didn't live in that community. As a consequence, we began to lose a lot of the affect, the effect that being a part of a community of people that have a common interest tends to produce in those people that have the common interest. When everybody's on the same team and the oars are all going in the same direction, you tend to get better results than when you got everybody just going off, on their own. That's what was happening in the Buffalo Public School District. So here we have a law that says that 20% of the teachers' evaluation should include the outcomes of the teachers' students on state standardized tests. Here we have a law that says that this senator says that law is insufficient and it needs to be changed, but there's no explanation of why this factor in teacher and principal evaluations is insufficient, or what the use of these test scores, what about the use of these test scores needs to be changed? What are you talking about? Why are we having this conversation? Well, I'm being facetious when I say that. I know why we're having this conversation, because teachers and principals and districts feel that if the success of the students or lack of the success of students is incorporated in evaluating the teacher or the school or the principal or the school district, then there's a possibility that you might lose your job. Your job security may be in jeopardy. You know, like if you make tires and some of the tires you make don't work, maybe we're not going to let you be the tire maker anymore. Might have to hire somebody else to be the tire maker, right? See, what the teachers don't want that. You know, they're saying that, you know, you shouldn't judge me, you know, on the basis of my effectiveness, or the principal or the school or the district on our effectiveness in teaching these kids, because the kids are difficult to teach. I mean, essentially, that's what they're saying. They're difficult to teach. You know, they're black, they're brown, they come from single-parent households, they come from households that are poor or near poor. They come from neighborhoods where there's more crime than there is in middle-class neighborhoods, you know, et cetera, right? So the kids all have all of these warts. So that's why we can't teach them, so you shouldn't judge us based on that. Well, if we don't judge them and include that into the assessment, what do we base that on, right? We have a caller hanging on right here. I hope I'm not making anybody upset. Hi, caller, are you there?
Good morning, Nathan.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Very good. You know, I think the system is broke all the way around. I mean, you've got romaine lettuce. We don't even know where the romaine lettuce is coming from, and people are getting sick. You saw me for years talk about energy-efficient light bulbs that have a neurotoxin, and yet they still sell them. That's things that our children get poisoned by. I've experienced the effects firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. And I did listen to a teacher not too long ago tell me that the children are being taught to take the tests and not necessarily learning what is behind the test, so to speak. And I'll just give you one example. I once took a biology exam, and I got a 98 on it. And the reason I didn't score a perfect 100 on it was because I couldn't read the word parasite. I should have been able to have read it, but I wasn't taught how to read necessarily properly. And that's part of the problem. And you also see that with cursive reading and writing, and how they've gotten rid of that, and critical thinking. So I'll just hang up and listen, but I just find it curious on how they keep breaking the system rather than trying to fix the system. And with that, I'll let you go, my friend. God bless, and have a glorious week.
All right, thanks, Bob, and welcome to spring. And so, you know, let me just kind of, again, pick at this point. At the end of the day, you need to know whether or not what you are paying for you're actually getting. I mean, I just like to make it just as funky and as clean and clear and down to earth as I can. You have a right to know if the car you bought works. You have a right to know if the machine that puts electricity into your house, that it works. You have a right to know whether or not the machine that heats your house, that it works. You have a right to know things. When you buy things, you have a right to know whether or not it works. You buy food, don't you expect to know that the food is correct, that there's nothing that's going to kill you, you know, in that food? You have a right to know that, right? So you have to assess that. You have to test that to find out whether or not it's what you think it is, okay? Well, now we have a situation where 1 out of every 5 students in New York State doesn't take the state standardized test. And here's the hustle on this. We're being told that it's the students who are refusing to take the test. I'm not making that up. You go back in the articles over the past 2 weeks that talk about this opt-out movement, you know, people opting not to take the test, and you will see in almost every article an assertion that it's the students who refuse to take the test. Now, I want you to wrap your mind around this thought. A 7-year-old kid in 3rd grade. What 7-year-old kid in the 3rd grade is going to tell you, no, I'm not going to take the test? That's just absurd. That's absurd. That's preposterous. It can't possibly be that that's true. But the people who are lobbying to have the test not be a part of the evaluation of the teachers and the principals in the school districts, those people are making up these constructs, these memes, these sort of ideas, right? These scripts, and they're putting that stuff in front of everybody. And because they say it over and over and over again, we have a tendency to pick up the words of the people that we hear in the media without thinking, what do those words actually mean? What are they saying to us, right? I mean, why would you not want to know where your child is in terms of your child's academic development in relation to standardized expectations for your child's grade level? Wouldn't you want to know that your fourth grade child reads at a fourth grade level, that your sixth grade child counts at a sixth grade level, that your eighth grade child has science principles at an eighth grade level? Wouldn't you want to know that? How in the world can you determine whether or not you've got your kids going on a path that's going to lead to their success as adults if you can't trust what's being, done with those kids as they're going from year to year, grade to grade? How can you possibly trust that process? Of course you have to know that, right? So we actually have people that are seducing parents in our community to do things that are in opposition to the parent's self-interest, right? So for the parents, and just so you understand, for the teachers and the administrators, they get rewarded every 2 weeks. Their core reward is their paycheck. Well, I mean, I said we're going to talk, straight words now, right? So their core reward is their paycheck, okay? I hope that they get some other vicarious, good feelings about the quality of what they do, but their core reward is their paycheck. But if you're the parent, what's your core reward? What do you get out of the deal? Well, I'm going to help you, okay? Because what you get out of the deal is the success or the lack of success in educating your child so that when your child gets to be 17, 18, 19 years old and it's time to leave high school and to move on, your child is able to get into a degree conferring program or a certificate, a vocational certification program that's going to secure your child's economic future for the decades ahead that your child is going to be a working adult. That's what you're trying to get done. Now, what happens if you don't get that done? Well, I'm going to give it to you, okay? Because you might not have figured this out. So I'm just going to, what's going to happen if you don't get that done? If you fail at achieving this reward for your, for the education of your child's going to end up now an adult sitting on your couch, eating your food.
One call.
Okay, eating your food, using your gas, driving your car, asking you for a weekly allowance, unable to find a job, leading to self-sufficiency. And I think you all know the rest of this story, right? So your reward is avoiding that. And the only way you can avoid that is for you to steward your child through the educational process and having your child tested in a way that you know that you can count on what the meaning is of the test is the only way you're going to be able to get that done. We have a caller hanging on. Let me grab that call real quick. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Hare. How you doing?
Hey, Sam. How you doing?
You're making a lot of sense this morning, as every Monday. So, first of all, just as a parent leader, I want to thank you for touching on this topic this way. I have a specific question. I know the answer to this question as an individual parent, but really what I'm asking you for is what do we do as a collective of parents? Because the narrative that you're talking about is switched to an explanation for why teachers can't effectively teach children from our community. How do we switch the narrative to say, just to ask a simple question, can you do this job with the children you have or not? And if you can't, can we hire somebody that can? I mean, how do we eliminate having to hear the reason why somebody can't do a job that they're hired and paid to do?
See, now that makes an awful lot of sense to me. So now we have to get to where's the bat? Where's the compelling force that we can use to get the resources to the parent that the parent needs to succeed in educating the child. So we know that one resource would be to transfer the child to a different school in the district that is more successful in teaching the child. So that's one way we can go. Remember, you got to use a lot of possible options. Another way that you can go is to
Yeah,
move.
and that way again. I mean, like I know what to do as an individual parent, and I think that works parent to parent. I think that's really where the rubber hits the road. Every individual parent has to make that decision. But my real question is that is there anything we can do as taxpayers or as citizens to get past this narrative where this organized body is, switching the narrative to something that has, we have no interest in really the reason why you can't do a job. I'm sure if I showed up to work and gave you a long explanation why I wasn't able to do what you hired me to do, you might be nice and listen to it, but at the end of the day, you'll say, well, okay, go on to a job you can't do. You can do. Because I'm not going to pay you to do something you
Exactly.
They're admitting to us they can't do it.
Right. Now, of course, they're saying that, they're doing the job. It's just not working. It's like you're trying to ride your bicycle and you're moving the pedals, but the wheels aren't moving. So I guess the chain must not be on.
You don't pay me just to show up to a job. Then I can show up and be there every day, but if at the end of the day I'm not producing the result I am paid for to produce, there's no wrong with that. The question becomes, if they're admitting to the fact that they're doing the job but they're not getting the result, is there a collective way to hold them accountable?
There's no collective way to do it unless we can get a large collection of the people to get behind it. So what we've got to do is begin to champion the issue of successful schools. That if the school is not succeeding in teaching the children, then we want the children to have a different option. And we need to describe what those options are, whether it's going to another school district, whether it's going to a charter school, whether it's going to a different school in the district, whether it's going to home-based education, whether it's going to a more interventive approach to assessing teachers and removing teachers that are not effective in teaching the kinds of kids that they have in their classrooms. But we have to have a movement where there's a constituency of the parents and even students that are demanding better for themselves. And then we have to put forward what are the kinds of things that would make things better. One of the things we have to do, Sam, is we have to make it the norm in districts like Buffalo, where everybody is really talking about the success of the children. It's and I know you had this when you were coming up. I know when I was coming up, of course, the projects, everybody lived very close to each other, so everybody was in everybody else's life stream. But everybody seemed to have a conscious stake in every other kid's educational success. When a report card came around, everybody was looking at everybody else's report cards. All parents were looking at not just their child's report card; they were looking at your child's report card too. And there seemed to be a high expectation on the part of parents for the outcomes of the children. We have to somehow resurface that because if you don't have that, you're not going to have the political will, the political support to be able to get the changes in your local districts and in the state administration to make things happen the way that we would like for them to happen.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Talk to you then. All right. I think we want to grab, let's take our last break, and then we'll finish up our subject. If you all stick with us, we will see you on the side of the break here at Living Now. Living. All right, welcome back to Living Now here at WFO. Power 96.5 FM on your dial. This is L.nathan here, your host. We're here with Emmanuel Radford, who's doing the live streaming of the program. I think we got some comments from people that are listening online.
Yes, you have quite a few. All right, so the first one says, when you, in the beginning of the show, he said, sound good. Wrong one, I'm saying. All right. He said, the broken part is the way they're teaching and the what they are teaching. So he agreed with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Then he said, the social system must be considered, and we need to educate for business development and team building because it's a feeling of futility.
Futility, right. So let's take those two comments, right? You know, when the legislators who are proposing this new legislation say the system is broken, they're not saying it's broken and they're offering an alternative to how to fix it. They're saying that evaluating the success or lack of success of the students who are being taught and putting that into the evaluation of the teachers or the principals or the schools, they're saying that that's what's broken. I don't think that makes any sense. I mean, if I'm manufacturing cars or tires and the tires that I make don't work, I can tell you that the road's, rough, that, it rained hard, I can give you all kinds of reasons, but at the end of the day, if the tires I make don't work, that's a problem. That problem has to be addressed. So the issue that you raise about the teaching, the way children are being taught and the way teachers teach is, I think, one of the critical aspects of reform, what it is that we need to change. In other words, if we have to align what is being taught to the children to what they're going to need to use when they go out into the world, when they get finished with their education. When they go out into the world, they're not going out into the world of work at age 17 or 18 or 19 years old. They're going to go to finishing school. They're going to go to a vocational certification program or a associate degree program or an undergraduate degree program leading to professional certification. So they have to be prepared to be able to do that. So you have to help enroll children in the idea that what I'm teaching you is going to help you go to the stage that you're going to have to go to next in order for you to be able to enter your life with some success, with some economic success. The way we teach obviously has to take into account who it is you're teaching. If 78% of the kids that you are teaching in your school district are black and brown and yellow and red children, it would seem to me that you would want to have people that represent those communities in significant numbers. They don't have to be proportionately, the same number, but there should be enough of people from each of those communities in the community of people that are teaching these students, that the students feel that being an educated person, being a teacher, is normal for them, that they're not seeing themselves as being taught by somebody else. They see themselves being taught by people who are a part of the same life continuum that these students are in. Go ahead.
In response, he said, start by telling them the truth about who they are and why they are in this country.
So that's really the point that I'm making. It's a great observation, because if you don't do what the caller or the respondent just said, you tend to alienate the children from the school. If the school seems like it's a outpost from somebody else in the middle of your community, or you're being dragged, someplace that you're being forced to go to that doesn't really have anything to do with your life, that lesson is not lost on you in the course of your receiving instruction or your interacting with your teachers and the administrators in your school. And one of the things that we know for certain is a high proportion of the success of students has to do with the relationship is between the teachers and the students. If the students and the teachers feel alienated from each other, you tend to have less success in teaching those children. We have any other? Okay. Teaching those children. So having said all of this, let me just say also that my goal is to prepare you as the parents, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, sisters, and brothers of the school children for what you have to do to secure the future of your family members. Clearly, the teachers and the principals are looking out for what they perceive to be their best interest. No one is going to look out for your child more forcefully than you. So how can I help you? Well, what Sam was talking about is how do we build a collective approach to try to get things done. I'm suggesting to us that we do that, but I'm also suggesting that we develop a sort of a game plan that tells us what are the things that we need to be looking at year to year, age to age, so that we know when we're seeing what we want to see with our child, and we also know when we're not seeing what we want to see with our child. I wanted to pool together evidence-based resources that would help you understand what you need to see happening with your child at each of the core stages of your child's academic career. Regardless of all the distractions, temptations, pitfalls, accidents, current skill levels, or whatever, there are clear, observable things you can monitor and promote in your child that will secure her or his future. Please don't object by saying that it will be hard or will require a lot of concentrated effort on your part. The day you decided to have your child, you decided that you shoulder this responsibility. It's a responsibility you already own. My charge is to help you succeed in fulfilling the charge that is on you. We have responded?
Yep.
Okay.
We have a comment that says, a big part is that many black children feel alienated from success in America.
And that's absolutely correct. And not just alienated from success, they're alienated from the people that are supposed to be a part of the process of educating you. Because you have 85%, the people who teach these kids basically are Caucasian women, often younger, Caucasian women. And here we have, in Buffalo, 78 or so percent of the kids are non-Caucasian children. So you see that there is a natural alienation, and then if we don't find ways to make the curriculum something that reflects the life experience, the lived experience of the people, the families of the children in these schools, that further alienates the children from the process of education. So I went to a report called Predictors of Post-Secondary Success, College and Career Readiness. This was written in November of 2013. The Success Center searched for studies across all grade levels that identify factors that predict future and proximal academic success, like kindergarten readiness is correlated with third grade reading proficiency. In other words, if your child is able to read and count on grade at kindergarten or first grade, your child is likely to be able to read and count on grade by the time they get to third grade. And then that tends to be a foundation that everything else builds on. For the purposes of this brief, they chose to include a broad range of benchmarks of future success and present I want to present these findings in the context of indicators, predictors, and other potential factors. So for early childhood, indicators of post-secondary success, they talk about if a child has developed the traits of persistence, emotion regulation, and attentiveness, that child has a really good chance of getting from kindergarten through third grade and being at grade level in terms of their reading, writing, math, and science precept skills. Persistence, they're talking about your ability to stay on task, just do a project until you get it done. The emotional regulation is your ability to be able to, do class without shouting and getting yourself in trouble in class and so on, and your ability to keep your attention on stuff. You have a comment?
One more comment.
Mm-hmm.
As a teacher, I saw a group of sixth graders break a young white teacher. She had no idea how to interact with her children.
And so this is the reality. No disrespect from people that come. I always use this Bath, New York. I only say Bath, New York because it's way down in the southern border of our county and whatnot, and there are hardly any African people, in Bath, New York. But you get a person who comes from that environment and comes into a school on, say, Lytton, Alexander or someplace. They're going to be in a reality that they don't have any facility with. They have not lived any of the experience of the kids and the families of the kids who they're teaching. And so that tends to come across. And because you can't come across to the children as if you think the children are alien, the children are going to look at you as if they think that you're an alien. And then the teacher sort of reflects in their affect that there's some judgment that they have about the child. And the child immediately, grasp that, and they turn on the teacher and they judge the teacher. And so now you have a poison that sets in, and it only gets worse. It never gets better. You just concretize the alienation rather than finding ways to break that alienation down. You just have to change significantly the population of people that are doing the teaching. And if you can change, when I say significantly, I'm not saying you have to have a 50% turnover of teachers, but you may have to have a 15 or 20% turnover of teachers that go from being a 85% Caucasian woman population to maybe a 65% Caucasian woman population, and the rest of that population being made up of men, Caucasian and non-Caucasian men, and people of different races and ethnicities. That's the only way you're going to be able to get that done. I'm not trying to throw 3,000 people or 4,000 people out of their jobs. I'm just trying to figure out a way to get the job done for the people that we're trying to help. When I looked at elementary school indicators, first achieving literacy, they got the hook on us, so we're going to have to run. We'll pick this up next week. Hopefully we're making some kind of sense. We look forward to talking to you all next week here at Living Right Now. See you then.